If the State Department, Yovanovitch, and Ukraine were all concerned about Hunter Biden at Burisma, then why aren't Trump and Zelensky allowed to be concerned too? Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about the testimony of former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Now that the House Democrats are having their open impeachment hearings, we get to hear from the cast of characters over at the State Department firsthand and what they have to say about the conduct of President Donald Trump's foreign policy to Ukraine. Keep that in mind. The president sets the foreign policy. The State Department is merely supposed to be the diplomats and the messengers of that policy to other countries. But even former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, was concerned about Hunter Biden's appointment to Burisma Holdings board of directors in 2014 because it came up in her testimony when she was getting confirmed by the U.S. Senate in 2016. And we can see that this is one of the biggest takeaways from Yovanovitch's public testimony in Congress. And she had an interest in exchange with U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik, a Republican out of New York, where Stefanik was asked about a prospective Q&A that was provided to Yovanovitch to address the conflict of interest the Bidens were creating by having the vice president's son serving on the board of directors of a company that was under active investigation for corruption in Ukraine. And so would Biden be using his position to try to get Burisma out of trouble or something like that? Was younger Biden, was he hired in order to help Burisma get out of trouble? These are all legitimate questions that, frankly, the State Department was concerned about. Because in the Q&A for Yovanovitch's confirmation hearing, and this is reporting from John Solomon, you can find this up on Scribd.com. In the Q&A that the State Department provided to Yovanovitch, in the model question was, quote, "Do you have any comment on Hunter Biden, the vice president's son, serving on the board of Burisma, a major Ukrainian gas company?" The draft Q&A asked. The recommended answer for Yovanovitch was, "For questions on Hunter Biden's role on Burisma, I would refer you to Vice President Biden's office." So even they anticipated that these questions would be asked when she was coming up for her confirmation hearing. And so let's hear the Q&A from Yovanovitch and Elise Stefanik here.
But let's take a step back. The first time you personally became aware of Burisma was actually when you were being prepared by the Obama State Department for your Senate confirmation hearings. And this was in the form of practice questions and answers. This was your deposition. And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the exact quote from your testimony, Ambassador, is, quote, "The way the question was phrased in this model Q&A was, what can you tell us about Hunter Biden's, being named to the board of Burisma?" So for the millions of Americans watching, President Obama's own State Department was so concerned about potential conflicts of interest from Hunter Biden's role at Burisma that they raised it themselves while prepping this wonderful ambassador nominee before her confirmation. And yet our Democratic colleagues and the chairman of this committee cry foul when we dare ask that same question that the Obama State Department was so concerned about.
So that's a home run from Elise Stefanik, and she's raising a very interesting point about this Q&A, the fact that the State Department itself was extremely concerned about Hunter Biden's role for U.S. policy with the implications by serving on the board of directors of Burisma, which was under active investigation by Ukrainian prosecutors. And so I think that's a legitimate conflict of interest to raise questions about. And, oh, by the way, that's why President Donald Trump was speaking to President Zelensky of Ukraine in his July 25th phone call about. The other thing, quote, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into that, it sounds horrible to me." So here the president is referring to Joe Biden's bragging about getting the prosecutor general fired in Ukraine, who says he was investigating Burisma Holdings, this Viktor Shokin. And he actually delivered a statement in a European court recently in the past few months, where he testifies that the reason he was fired was because he was investigating Burisma. Now, U.S. State Department and Ukrainian officials, they say, oh, Shokin was corrupt, that's why we had to get rid of him. But according to Shokin, he says that he tells a different story here. He says, quote, the truth is that I was forced out because I was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into Burisma Holdings, a natural gas firm active in Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was a member of the board of directors. On several occasions, President Poroshenko asked me to have a look at the case against Burisma and consider the possibility of winding down the investigative actions in respect of this company, but I refused to close this investigation. Now, Shokin's travel visa to the United States, which Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, which he was investigating this issue, by the way, when the Mueller investigation, special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, was still ongoing. And so this was a part of Giuliani's defense against Trump, was to find out what was going on in Ukraine, what were the Ukrainian origins of the phony, false allegations against Trump and his campaign that they were Russian agents, which was ultimately debunked by Robert Mueller's report that found that there was no conspiracy between Trump, his campaign, and Russia to hack the DNC and put emails onto WikiLeaks. And Giuliani tried to get Shokin his travel visa to the United States so that he could come to here and tell his story, and it was denied by the State Department. And Marie Yovanovitch, she knew all about it. And I think that that's a pretty it looks bad. It looks horrible. That's what Trump said. It sounds horrible to me. And the Ukrainian president, he said, I wanted to tell you about the prosecutor, Mr. President. First of all, I understand and I'm knowledgeable about the situation, speaking on Biden and Burisma. Since we have won the absolute majority, the new prosecutor general will be 100% my person, my candidate. He will look into this situation, specifically to the company you just mentioned in this issue. So if the State Department was concerned about Hunter Biden and Burisma, and then Joe Biden firing the prosecutor, eventually who says he was investigating this company, then why can't Trump and Zelensky have that same conversation? Why can't Elise Stefanik? Why can't she raise these questions? These are legitimate questions about what happened with Burisma. Were there bribes paid or something? I mean, looks really fishy because this investigation was dropped shortly after Shokin was fired in 2016. And there was an email prior to Shokin being fired where these are State Department officials speaking to one another about, per our conversation, Karen Tramontano of Blue Star Strategies, she was representing Burisma, requested a meeting to discuss U.S. government remarks alleging Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, of corruption. She noted that two high-profile U.S. citizens are affiliated with the company, including Hunter Biden as a board member. Tramontano would like to talk to the United States State Department about getting a better understanding of how the U.S. came to the determination that the company is corrupt. According to Tramontano, there is no evidence of corruption, has been no hearing or process, and evidence to the contrary has not even been considered. So they were trying to say, we're not corrupt. Hunter Biden serves on our board, and a month later, Shokin is removed from his post, and then the investigation into Burisma winds on down. And so I think that President Trump was right to raise these questions in his conversation and to say, hey, there may have been some corruption here and the United States might have been involved. We're not here to interfere. You can carry on with your investigation if you felt like we were trying to shut it down. And so I think that that's legitimate. And if that's all that was going on in this phone conversation between Trump and Zelensky, there's no impeachable offense here. In fact, Trump is enforcing the law. And I'll leave you with the close here. Everyone agreed Burisma had a corruption problem and that the Bidens created conflicts of interest by having Hunter Biden, the vice president's son, serve on the board of directors of Burisma, a company that was under active investigation for corruption in Ukraine. Everyone agreed, the State Department, Yovanovitch, Ukrainian prosecutors, the current Ukrainian president, and yes, President Donald Trump, But if everyone was concerned about Hunter Biden at Burisma, then why aren't Trump and Zelensky allowed to be concerned too? That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.